Hello and welcome to part two. I'm Esther and I'm talking about universal medicine, and in part two of this two-part series I'm going to talk about the commitment that keeps people in universal medicine. So a lot of outsiders can't really understand what's the attraction. Why are people attracted to this unusual kind of group with its strange beliefs and strange practices, and why do they get so defensive about any criticism? So a lot of people can't really, people are intrigued about how that happens. Why are they so convinced? So I'm going to talk about commitment, and that will be in a few parts. There's probably three basic areas of the universal medicine commitment that we need to look at, and one we've already looked at is fear in part one. The second thing is peer pressure, and when we talk about peer pressure, we'll talk about privacy and competition. And the third thing that keeps people committed is investment, and that can be all kinds of investment, money being a very big part of it, but there's also time and energy. So in part one we talked about universal medicine's business model. What is universal medicine? What's the business model? And the business model is based on fear. We talked about how the company does a kind of a bait and switch. People who are introduced to universal medicine really go looking for it they think it's a health service at first. It's marketed as a health service, but what they find once they've been in for a little while, and been involved for a while, is that they've joined a religion. And they've adopted a whole new belief system. I looked at how that's done, which is to make people feel good at first. That is the big attraction at first. People feel good. There's these lovely hands-on healings that are very relaxing. Someone's nice warm hands on you, and then there's gentle breath meditation. But what those things do is put people into a suggestible state. They're very relaxed, and so once you become more involved, you become kind of surrounded by people who believe in Serge Benhayon's religion, the way of the livingness, and this belief system infiltrates and kind of changes the way you think. Now the fear part is that Serge is teaching about energy, the things that cause your problems in this life, health problems and other problems. It's to do with bad energy, pranic energy, and also karma, things that you've done in your past lives, and supernatural entities, that are clinging to you for various reasons. For example, if you come into contact with someone who drinks liquor, alcohol, then that leaves you open to be attacked by entities, violated by entities. And not only that, the entities can violate your children as well. So the business model is based on running these activities and healings that aim to clear prana and help people to live an esoteric life. But clearing prana, Serge has sort of ensured this repeat business because there's so much prana surrounding you. There's so many, and you've got all these problems from so many past lives, and he keeps people involved because they become afraid that if they don't clear this negative energy, they'll get sick. If they don't adhere to his way of the livingness, they will continue to get sick and have bad luck. And so will their kids, and this will go on for many, many lifetimes. So, Scientologists you might have heard that they sign a billion-year contract of commitment to Scientology, based on this idea of reincarnation. And Serge does something, it's really a similar thing in universal medicine, because if you listen to what Serge says, you believe you're going to be affected very badly for many lifetimes if you don't sort of go on this esoteric path, a fiery path. And I might just say something about Serge's religion, which, interestingly, in the UK, he applied, or universal medicine and its followers applied for charitable status as a religion. They asked for the way of the livingness to be recognised as a religion for charity status, so they could, get donations without paying tax. And they were turned down. The Charity Commission in the UK rejected it. But one of the reasons, there were a few reasons, some of them were technical and financial, to do with the charity's constitution. But another reason was because the way of the livingness is actually a form of theosophy, and in the UK, theosophy is not recognised as a religion. But it sort of goes to show that Serge's religion, the way of the livingness, based on theosophy, it's not really, you can't really say he invented it, he didn't really devise the way of the livingness. He's borrowed it. And he's basically taken, there's a theosophical author called Alice Bailey from last century. Serge has claimed he's the reincarnation of Alice Bailey, so that enabled him to kind of borrow her entire kind of philosophy, postmodern kind of philosophy to do with, that mixes up all of these different deities from all different religious and spiritual traditions around the world. Serge just borrowed it, but he added a few of his own touches, like I think prana being evil was, I think, a Serge touch, and all of this stuff about him being very negative about the human body and death as a healing, I'm not sure that Alice Bailey taught that sort of thing, but Serge is very much into glorifying death. So, but the other point about that is that Serge has done he's pretty lazy, really. I mean, he's just borrowed a religion from someone else and kind of appointed himself as the leader, not only the leader. He says that he's a member of the ascended masters of the hierarchy, and he's descended, and now he's in human form, in a human body, to kind of save us. He's the source of all truth, and there is no other valid truths. Serge is the big cheese, he's it. So you're not allowed to argue with him, because he's the authority on everything, and we're all deluded. Anyone else who's not listening, anyone who's not listening to Serge is deluded. So that's just a little aside. But this is part of the hold of universal medicine, is that his followers believe they are on the path, the only path, the one true, they've joined the one true religion. It's his big selling point. Okay, so we've talked about fear. I think we kind of understand pretty well that his followers get very paranoid about bad energy, and they become a bit difficult to get along with and a bit insular, they sort of don't hang out with outsiders anymore, and they're very, very tough on critics. So they're not happy at all that I have made critical comments about their practices and teachings and behaviour. there's a very, very much a us versus them kind of mentality, adversarial mentality among them. The other thing about commitment, so if we're talking about commitment to universal medicine, there's a commitment that comes out of fear because people are afraid to leave, afraid to do the wrong thing. There'll be supernatural consequences if they do. There's also peer pressure, and so that starts with privacy being a big deal. When you are introduced to universal medicine and you start going for healings and going to these activities, events, workshops, courses, you start to give away your personal information. People are, the universal medicine people you come across, they're friendly, they're affectionate, they tell you you're special and wonderful and amazing. And you've gone in there because you're not maybe having a bit of a tough time for some reason or another. People are interested in you, they want to know about you, they're quite inquisitive. So you start talking about your personal stuff. And you'll do it in group settings too. You do it in their treatment rooms, but also in their workshops, for sort of personal development workshops. People start opening up about bad habits or relationship breakups or addictions or, bad experiences, traumas that they've been through. Universal medicine itself also collects people's personal information. They're very keen on that and pretty comprehensive with it too. They'll give you a consent form for just a 5-hour workshop and they'll ask you to fill in your medical history. They want a list of medications that you're on, and they've asked people to talk about their life experiences. You've been through any major events in your life. So they're collecting data on their targets, on their recruits, their students. And they can use that to market things. If you have cancer or you have some disease, then they can market healing at you. But the problem with all of this sharing of your private information is that can be used against you. And so when you know that people have dirt on you, or people have dirt on you, you become a little bit reluctant to upset anybody. And so, if it comes to, if you see something going on that you think is a bit dodgy, you might not say anything. You might be a bit reluctant to question. And this is also factors into when people want to leave. If they want out, they might be pretty worried that they're going to be bad-mouthed, that stuff they've told people within universal medicine, because it becomes group knowledge, becomes your private information becomes the property of the group, that will be used against them. That can affect their self-esteem just personally, but also might affect job prospects. It might affect their family, might have an impact on people they care about. So the privacy thing ends up being a source of pressure in universal medicine. The other source of peer pressure in universal medicine is competition. So it's very competitive once you get in there, because Serge has an initiation scale, and the initiation scale is, Scientology has something similar too. They both have these commercial scales of spiritual development. So you pay. The more you pay, really, and the more committed you are, the more likely you are to climb this scale of exaltation, where you think you're special, and so that's competitive already. And so Serge has his followers looking to ascend to this scale to become closer to him and, ultimately to become closer to God. But, it just doesn't come cheap. You've got to be committed. You've got to attend lots of workshops and lots of healings. You've got to clear that prana. You've got to clear your prana. You've got to be entity-free, if you want to reach those higher echelons of the initiation scale. So there's competition, spiritual competition. And there's an idea of service in universal medicine too, that to be on the way of the livingness, really you need to be serving the cause. They sort of think of it as serving humanity, but it's actually serving Serge's business. And Serge's business is to kind of save humanity, he reckons, but it's probably about getting wealthy. Anyway, so there's this idea of service. So Serge's followers, the universal medicine followers, will do things like he's got a heap of them working as volunteers, writing content for universal medicine's 30 promotional websites. They've got this vast number of websites. They're trying to dominate the internet, with their stuff. Or, when you Google search for universal medicine, you'll come up with all these sites, so many of them. So he has people working sometimes very long hours, putting in a lot of their spare time to produce content for the sites, also for the College of Universal Medicine, which is a charity which Serge founded for their courses. And the idea of that charity is to raise funds to build a building, and that building already, that's partly funded, is where Serge operates his business from. Some of his business is carried out in that premises, and so it's raising money for the business premises is tax free. Anyway, so there's that competition. Also, for outsiders, if you want to see universal medicine followers competing in action, just look at their social media activity. So there's almost a competition to see who can tweet the most links to Unimed Living website, or who can make the most posts on Facebook, who can say the nicest things about publicly about Serge, universal medicine, about his children, about the business, about the products. So really he's got this kind of volunteer workforce working for free to promote his business, working for a multi-millionaire to promote the business. The other way that they're competing with each other to form, and this peer pressure comes from, it's a financial competition as well. Who can spend the most? Like, that is a sign of devotion. Serge's followers are very, very committed to attending all of the events, every available event that they can get themselves to, they'll go to, whether they can afford it or not. And not just going once, though, too. You don't just go to a workshop one time. The Glory workshop, or the Livingness workshop, or practitioner courses, these healing practitioner courses. This one has 5 levels. You don't just go to it once and get yourself an accreditation, esoteric, in-house. It doesn't mean anything outside of universal medicine, but you don't just go to this round of courses once. A weekend, one of these stages will be a weekend course, 3 days, 2, 3, 4 days, $600, $800, $1,200. They don't just go once, they go every time it rolls round, every year, repeating it. So you're getting Serge's followers repeating the same thing, going, and the content doesn't change. He tells them that there might be something different each time, but it's all the same content. The other way that they're competing financially is with donations. And so, you donate. In the past, before they established charities, they would donate to building funds. Now, the big thing is to leave Serge Universal Medicine money in your will, to bequeath money to Serge and Universal Medicine. So that's kind of become competitive as well. And they're not just leaving a couple of $100 to Serge. People are signing over all their assets, their whole estate, to Serge, regardless of whether they have dependents, regardless of whether they have children or other people in need, other worthy causes. They're signing over their assets to a millionaire, And what's Serge going to do with the money? He doesn't believe in fun, so what's he going to spend it on? He just really buys property. So, you're just making a donation to his property portfolio and the expansion of this empire that he's been trying to build. So, it's competitive financially as well. So this is where we get into investment. And so another hold that Serge has, or Universal Medicine has, on followers is this big investment they've made into it. And they're investing their time. So you've got these people donating their time to produce content or spending time on the social media and making comments every day on their sites, on their blogs. So there's time you put in going to all these events every year. You fly to Vietnam for a retreat, going to many repeat healings, with esoteric healers. So it's a big investment of time, energy. There's these rituals around how the way you prepare food. You get up in the morning, you listen to a podcast, you do your true movement or your esoteric yoga or whatever it is. But you can't just cook an egg. So if you make scrambled eggs, you've got to stir the eggs clockwise and all this stuff. There's a lot of energy that people have invested in this belief system, and then there's the money. It's interesting here to talk about the pyramid scheme that is Universal Medicine, and how that kind of almost is like a parallel to the initiation scale. Both are kind of pyramids with Serge at the top. So on the initiation scale, Serge is at the top, and planet Earth, Serge is it. And the same thing on his financial, his business pyramid scheme. Serge is at the top. That money is floating. It's all headed uphill. With Serge being the main beneficiary. Pyramid scheme is interesting because it rewards people who are not only faithful in terms of their spiritual commitment, but it rewards people who can bring in new customers. And those are the people who find themselves towards the top of the business pyramid scheme that is Universal Medicine. And his followers compete to get up there. They want to be the ones that are getting the financial benefits of that uphill flow of money. So what you need, and it works. It's a cartel kind of arrangement. There's referrals, a lot of referrals. So universal medicine as a community. It's an economy of its own. It's a small economy, kind of a self-contained economy as well. So what happens is that money goes around too. A bit goes up, it goes around. So what Serge will do is if he feels that you can bring in new customers, fresh meat, new money, then he will endorse you, with whatever your business is. So if you're an esoteric healer, he'll sort of say to his congregation, oh, she's got a lot of integrity. She's done really good work. She's very esoteric. You should go to her for your healing. Also, or any other business. If you cut grass, cut hair, you do haircuts. Serge will say, oh, the way she cuts hair is very esoteric. She's very soulful in the way that she cuts hair. If you go to her, you'll get a soulful haircut. It will, get rid of prana or whatever. So he'll endorse you. Now, if he endorses you, and that means the congregation, once you've got that endorsement, they're going to come to your business, they'll patronise your business, then you're going to be pretty reluctant to criticise or express any doubts. And there's examples, that I've heard of where people have been expressing doubts, and so Serge it can go either way. Serge will either kind of badmouth them so that they leave and gets rid of them, or he'll start talking up their business so that they're sort of lured in. And of course, when you get this endorsement and you get all this new business, you don't want to upset your new customers, so you'll keep quiet. And even if you're having doubts about some of the kind of kooky parts of universal medicine, some of these crazy beliefs, that evolution isn't true, for example, odd stuff like that, that bananas are pranic and evil, you're not going to say anything, because you don't want to jeopardize your business. You don't want to be financially penalized. So the other way that people compete too is there's a lot of money in universal medicine, in teaching, running these esoteric healing training courses, because Serge knows. You stand in your clinic, or you're in your clinic, you treat one person at a time, you stick your hands on them for an hour, you can only get $70 out of them, right? But if you run a course training practitioners, this is the big racket that is alternative medicine these days as well. There's a lot more money in training people to become healers than there is in toughing it out in a treatment room, dealing with one patient at a time. You can only make a limited amount of money. But if you can pack a few hundred people into a weekend course and charge them $600,000-$800,000, you can make very, very big money. And that's been a major source of income for universal medicine, is the courses. Probably their biggest, I'm not sure which is the biggest source of income. The courses are big. The donations are huge. So it'd be hard to quantify how much the donations and bequests are bringing in. But anyway, about the courses. So, they're running these courses in training esoteric practitioners. Now, those aren't going so well these days, because a few years on, where they've been running these for a few years and giving out these funny accreditations that aren't recognised outside of universal medicine, certainly not officially recognised. People are realising, you're trained to be an esoteric practitioner, you can't make any money. It's a competitive marketplace these days. You go out into a marketplace where there's lots of people doing therapies, and a lot more effective than this stuff, which doesn't really do much. So at the very beginning, the training courses were going gangbusters because people had this idea, I could become an esoteric practitioner and make a living out of it. You can't. The only way that you can make a living out of esoteric healing is to be part of the training, is to be one of the people doing the training. So they're the people that, if they can claw their way up the pyramid, if they can suck up to Serge enough, they'll be the ones that are doing the training. So they'll be pulling an income from helping out with the training. But at the bottom rung, there's no money in it. It's just expenditure. That bottom though is shrinking, and as the bottom of the pyramid shrinks, there'll be less money coming in. Anyway, but yeah, it's all about an internal referral system. The whole idea too of becoming an esoteric practitioner was that other practitioners would refer to you, or at the top of Serge's pyramid are registered, properly qualified people, psychologists, mystic dentists, doctors, who were, refer to other esoteric practitioners a bit, not much, but then those people have a legitimate source of earning a living. They don't have to worry about money, but people sort of thinking that they can become an esoteric practitioner without any other qualifications, it's not going to happen. Okay, so that's the investment. But all of that money you've thrown at Serge and at universal medicine, that also has a hold on people. So if your livelihood is dependent on the congregation coming to you, it's harder to leave, because then you're going to have to find another way of making a living, or you have to find new customers. So that's difficult. And also, once you've thrown tens of thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands maybe, at this organisation, it's a bit hard to admit you've been conned. You don't want to sort of, it's a kind of it's embarrassing. So that keeps people in as well. So you don't just have this kind of fear of the entities getting you when you leave, and fear of prana coming, being bombarded with prana and then dying of cancer when you leave. You've got to admit to yourself you've spent a truckload of money on something that's actually pretty dodgy. So all of this, it helps to keep people committed. So anyway, let's wind it up. I've talked enough. Probably what I'd conclude with is, you're getting an idea of what this, hopefully by now you sort of got an idea of how people are attracted. What gets them in the first place is just that they think they're going to be improving their health. But what gets them to stay is fear, fear of spiritual consequences, social consequences, financial consequences. If they're unhappy and they want to leave. And also, probably the point I'd make too before I finish up is that the spiritual initiation scale and the spiritual aspirations and the financial aspirations are quite well related. There's some parallels there as well. But anyway, thank you for bearing with me if you made it this far. If you would like to know more, come to my blogs, Universal Medicine Accountability, Universal Medicine Exposed. Follow me on Twitter at Esther Rockett. And you can ask questions on my blogs. There's a comments area, there's a contact form if you have any questions. So, thanks for listening.